Welcome to the Writing Center tutorial series. The goal of this series is to provide you with helpful information from the comfort of your home. If you have any questions after the video, please do not hesitate to contact us at writing@mun.ca. This video presents an overview of common sentence problems students may have when writing. You write an essay, a short answer, a data commentary, a critique, whatever the request. Part of your editing process is to look carefully at the sentences you have written. We all make sentence structure errors, but we can all learn to locate them and correct them. I hope with this Writing Center quick tutorial you can be confident when you review your sentences. Again, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact us. The goal of sentences is to provide a complete thought. And in order to provide a complete thought to the audience, all of your sentences must have the correct grammar and punctuation. But we do encounter sentence problems when we write. Be extra cautious if you use grammar checkers, as they can signal errors that are not errors. As well, they can miss errors. So let's talk about 6 common sentence problems in this tutorial. Faulty parallelism, fragment sentences, fused sentences, comma splices, sentences that are choppy, and sentences that become stringy. At the end of the tutorial, please check out the interactive activities that are available to you on our website. Faulty parallelism is the first sentence problem to be discussed in this tutorial. And when we think about the word parallel, we think of 2 lines sitting side by side with the same space and following the same direction. Well, sentence structure also needs to be paralleled when you provide lists of items. When we're looking at faulty parallelism, you're considering the fact of joining phrases or clauses that are not similar in grammar structures. They may be individual words, phrases, or even clauses. Every sentence needs to be logical, and having your ideas presented in parallel form will make it simpler to your audience to understand. The best way to check your parallelism in a piece of writing is to locate words that are used to provide lists, such as the word and, as well as, or even not only but also. Let's look at this example here. The researcher demonstrated the experiment with intensity, emotional, and ease. This is considered faulty parallelism. I have located the word and in the sentence, and I look at the words that are coming in front of the word and following the word and. We have the words intensity, which is a noun, and we have the word emotional, which is an adjective. After the word and, we have the word ease, which is a noun. This is considered faulty parallel structure because we have listed words that are not of compare or similarity. Intensity, emotional, and ease. In the second example I have, the facilitator not only presented the experiment process, but also the results. This is an example of faulty parallelism. I have underlined the words not only, but also. If I look in between these words, I have a verb phrase, presented the experiment process, followed by the results. This is faulty. Again, let's look at this one example. The researcher demonstrated the experiment with intensity, emotional, and ease. And we'd like to fix this faulty parallel error. I can add new words by changing the word form. The researcher demonstrated the experiment with intensity, noun, emotion, noun, and ease, noun. Now this sentence is considered parallel with a list of 3 nouns. In the second example, the facilitator not only presented the experiment process, but also the results. As we noted earlier, this is an example of faulty parallelism, and to fix this sentence, we need to establish that all parts are parallel, of the same form or grammar note. The facilitator presented not only the experiment process, but also the results. The experiment process is the noun, and the results is the noun. Let's have a look at fragment sentences, our second common sentence problem. Putting it simply, a fragment is an incomplete sentence. It is broken because parts are missing in its structure. As a result, it is grammatically incorrect. Other times you may need to restructure the sentence elements. So what can be missing? Sometimes it's just the subject. Sometimes it's just the verb. And sometimes it's the subject and the verb. So let's look at some examples of fragment sentences. By researching the data collected in the survey is the first step in the process. Clear example of a fragment error. There are missing elements. In my second example, researchers working on the project in the new facility. It's incomplete as well. I feel that there's something missing. So how can we fix these sentences? Let's look at one more. Because the support staff work through the evening. This is a really common fragment sentence error. It's an incomplete sentence not for missing words, but an entire sentence component, a clause. So let's look at these sentence problems again and figure out how can we address the sentence problem. In the first example, I can eliminate the word by and put a capital letter for the word researching. Researching the data collected in the survey is the first step in the process. By fixing this particular sentence, I've now created researching the data collected in the survey as functioning as the subject. Another option is I can move the sentence structure around. The first step in the process is researching the data collected in the survey. Through this repair, is researching now becomes the verb. Let's look at a second example of the fragment error. Researchers working on the project in the new facility. How can I fix this one? I can certainly add an auxiliary verb, are, in front of working. Then I have a beautiful verb phrase. Researchers are working on the project in the new facility. Another option is I can add the words will be presenting at the end of the sentence. Researchers working on the project in the new facility will be presenting at the conference. So I've added a verb phrase, allowing researchers working on the project in the new facility to function as the subject. Let's look at the final fragment example that we had at the beginning. Because the support staff work through the evening. When I look at this particular sentence, I note that I have the word because at the beginning of the sentence. This is a great marker to locate errors. If you begin a sentence with a word such as because, then circle it and look for the independent clause that follows this dependent clause. Because the support staff work through the evening, comma, they left earlier the next day. This sentence is correct. Now I have a dependent clause functioning at the beginning of the sentence, followed by an independent clause, and they are marked separately based on the comma. Maybe I don't need to use the word because, so I'm just going to take it out and just have the support staff work through the evening. A fused sentence problem is when you have two or more independent clauses running together. They're fused together, they're stuck together, and they're joined together, but need to be joined correctly in the grammar world. So how do we fix a fused sentence? There are many solutions. You can certainly include different punctuation marks. Maybe you need to add a new word, and maybe you need to reorder the entire sentence. Let's look at some examples. The scientists collected the data, the students provided its data commentary. Cleared, fused sentence, and then it becomes quite confusing for the audience. Although the data was inadmissible, the effort was noted. Clear, fused sentence. The forecaster announced a weather bomb, but the residents did not prepare. And in this sentence, again, a good example of a fused sentence. Let's look at our first example again more closely. We have two subjects in this sentence, the scientists and the students. We have two main verbs, collected and provided. And these two independent clauses are fused. No punctuation is present. No transitional device is establishing a relationship between the clauses. And we have several options to fix this fused error. We can correct the fused error by adding a simple period, thus creating two simple sentences. And simple sentences can be effective for emphasis. However, we do not want to overuse simple sentences in a paragraph. How about we use a semicolon? This is an effective way for emphasis. It shows the relationship of the two clauses, but the writer must rely on the reader that they understand the relationship. The third choice is to add a transitional device along with the appropriate punctuation. Using such connective words will make it clear to the reader what the relationship is between the two clauses. So choose your correction carefully. Let's look at the second fused example. This one is a little different. You can see it begins with a subordinator, although. If a sentence begins with a subordinator, this indicates the start of a dependent clause. A sentence cannot have only a dependent clause. It requires an independent clause in order for it to be grammatically correct. As the dependent clause is at the beginning, we should see a comma at the end of the dependent clause, just before the independent clause, and no comma. So how will we fix this one? I can pop that comma right there between the word inadmissible and the beginning of the independent clause, the effort. Another option is I can just simply put a period in between the two clauses. But if I do that, I will have to delete the connecting device, although. Another option is to reverse the clauses, moving the independent clause at the beginning of the sentence, and thus the dependent clause will be at the end of the sentence. If I choose to do that, then you have to be aware of punctuation rules using connective devices in the second position. Let's look at the final fused example. And when I quickly look at this sentence, I noticed a coordinator is present, the word but. And when I use a coordinator, we need to remember the comma rule before the coordinator. And, or, but, yet, so. There are a lot of coordinators in the English language. So this will be one correction. I can certainly add the comma in front of the but, and then my sentence is corrected. I also can take out that comma and put the period instead of the comma. Remember, though, if I'm going to make two simple sentences, I must remove the but. Otherwise, the fused sentence now becomes a different sentence problem. The fourth sentence problem I would like to discuss is the comma splice. It really is a challenge for many students. Some students seem to think that a comma provides a break for the reading audience. Well, yes, it does, but you have to put it in the correct location. Otherwise, your comma cuts the sentence. It splices the sentence idea, and this could lead to a break in comprehension. Sometimes it's easy to fix a comma splice. You just remove it, but other times it can get a little trickier. Two or more independent clauses joined with a comma can create the comma splice. Let's have a look at an example of a comma splice error. The storm surge damaged the beach. The natural infrastructure will be impacted in the area. This is an example of a comma splice where the comma is misplaced. Our second example, the move to remote learning was challenging, Students adapted quickly. Again, the comma is located in an incorrect place. Looking at our first example of a comma splice sentence problem, what I do encourage you to do is to circle the punctuation, and we have a comma right here. Check to see what sentence elements are in front of the comma and what are coming after the comma. If a comma is located in the middle, is its purpose to mark the dependent clause and the independent clause? Well, not in this case, as there is not a subordinator in the first clause. The simplest and the fastest correction is to remove the comma and add a period. But too many simple sentences are not ideal in academic writing. If you can see a relationship between the two clauses, add a transition signal with a semicolon and a comma. Or maybe you add a coordinator to show the relationship, creating a compound sentence, such as the second example. The storm surge damaged the beach, semicolon. As a result, comma, the natural infrastructure will be impacted. The storm surge damaged the beach, comma, so the natural infrastructure will be impacted. Let's look at the other example of a comma splice error. The move to remote learning was challenging. Students adapted quickly. In this error, we've applied a few corrections. One, we can create two simple sentences. Again, keep in mind, too many simple sentences will reduce the flow of your paragraph. Two, I can add a transition signal along with the correct punctuation. You can use the semicolon in front of the transition signal, however, followed by a comma. And third, I can create a compound sentence by simply adding a coordinator with the present comma. Three good choices here, all fixing the comma splice sentence problem. Our fourth sentence problem that students may encounter is the choppy sentences. This means there's just too many simple sentences. And this is when writers lack devices to connect ideas and show relationships between ideas. And as a result, there is a lack of cohesion. Let's look at an example of a choppy sentence. Vertical farming is a controlled method in agriculture. It uses warehouses. There are irrigating and lighting systems inside. The first advantage is the high productivity in small areas. The second advantage is the short growing times. The third advantage is the low water use. This is a series of short, choppy sentences, and the flow of the material, the content that is presented in the paragraph, could easily be lost. So repairing this type of sentence problem involves a lot of thinking about word and idea relationships, the use of connective devices, and punctuation. Looking at the example again, there are numerous simple sentences here, and with repetitive words, and the reader can become quite lost. So we can combine these simple sentences to clarify the intended meaning. I have brought the series of choppy sentences down to 2 sentences by combining the ideas, adding some punctuation marks, and adding some special words. The final sentence problem in this tutorial is the stringy sentence. And this problem occurs when students overuse comfort words like and but. When we have a series of thoughts that are linked together with words like and, or, and but, it can become quite challenging to read, and comprehension of ideas can be lost. Also, there can be a lack of a break for a reader. Let's have a look at an example of a stringy sentence. Vertical farming is a controlled method in agriculture and uses warehouses with irrigating and lighting systems inside and has many advantages, where the first advantage is the high productivity in small areas, and the second is the short growing times, and the third advantage is the low water use. Wow, how do you feel when I read this sentence? Are you lost? Are you confused? Are you bored? The content is gone. The sentence goes on and on and on. So what can you do as a writer? How can you address these stringy sentences? Well, you can group these ideas that are related to be sure that they understand the relationships that are occurring in the writing piece. And remember, when you group these ideas, ask yourself what devices, what words you can use to indicate the connections. Maybe you want to explore the possibility of appositives to provide additional information for nouns. And finally, if all else fails, create more than one sentence. Let's check out the correction for this stringy sentence. The number of ands has certainly been reduced. The repetition of the word advantage has been reduced and combined. And the result is a nice flow. It's easy to comprehend for both the reader and the listener. Let's do a quick recap of the common sentence problems that are presented here in today's tutorial. Faulty parallelism is when you have an unbalanced set of sentence elements. Fragment sentences have missing elements. A fuse sentence problem involves missing punctuation and, in addition, some missing words as a sentence is running together. A comma splice refers to the misusage of a comma, placed incorrectly. The choppy sentence involves a series of many short, simple sentences, and they can certainly interfere with the understanding of a topic. And finally, the stringy sentence is like the opposite of a choppy sentence group. The stringy sentence lacks a lot of mechanics, punctuation, and word use. If you have any questions about this presentation or if you would like assistance with sentence problems, by all means, reach out to the Writing Center. We would be happy to make your academic writing experiences as seamless as possible. Simply drop a message to writing@mun.ca. Thank you.